So good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending our workers' comp informational webinar. My name is Sashay. I'm the executive assistant at the Bronx Chamber of Commerce, and I am joined today by Neil Gilberg as well as Deborah Spence. And so today we're going to be discussing the workers' compensation, disability, paid family leave, and any important aspects of those as it relates to COVID-19. And so we welcome you again, and we do want you to ask as many questions as you possibly can, but we will wait till the end. So as you hear the presentation and anything comes to mind, please feel free to jot it down at our Q&A section. And when we're done with the presentation, we'll go ahead and start the questions and answers aspect of it. And so, without further ado, I'd like to present to you Neil Gilbert. Neil?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having Deb and I help out with your members today in areas related to workers' compensation, disability, and paid family leave. Today, we will discuss what business owners need to know in order to be in compliance with New York State laws and to make sure that their businesses have a good foundation from where to begin, or if they're already in business, so that you don't run afoul of any laws and have any problems. Next slide, please. So the Office of the Advocate for Business was created out of legislation. There are two advocates at the board. One is the Advocate for Business, and the other is the Advocate for Injured Workers. We both work very closely together, and we have common goals in that we want to make sure that employees who are injured on the job are taken care of, and that employers have a safe environment for which the employees to work, and a level business playing field, so everybody's playing on the same level. My job as the advocate is to assist businesses with coverage and compliance problems, get around the state and educate business owners and government personnel on our system. And I do that by doing just what I'm doing now. Now in COVID, we're doing it virtually, but before COVID, I would be traveling from Montauk to Buffalo, meeting with business association, employer groups, chambers of commerces, just like yours, and having this back and forth where I get to let you know what you need to know, and I hear from you. And a lot of times when I hear from you, I learn things that might make our system a little better, that are unfair. And I report directly to the chairman of the board. And so if I did learn something that needed correcting, I would bring it to the chair's attention and it would be looked at. Next slide, please. So today, it's going to be like a workers' comp 101. What is it? Who needs it? How do you get it? So first of all, what is it? Workers' compensation insurance is a New York State mandated insurance that business owners need to have, and it covers on-the-job accidents, injuries, and illnesses. It provides medical treatment for that injured worker and wage replacement should that injured worker miss work because of that injury. It protects both the employee, as I just described, and it also protects the employer because 99% of the time when there's an accident on the job requiring medical and wage replacement, the employee cannot sue the employer. So the employer does not have to have an attorney to represent them because this insurance is going to take care of the employee. It's going to take care of their medical treatment and their wage replacement. That's workers' comp insurance. Next slide. Disability benefits insurance, which is also mandated, covers off-the-job accidents, injuries, and illnesses. But as opposed to workers' comp insurance, it only provides limited wage replacement up to $175 for 26 weeks, maximum. It does not have anything to do with medical treatment. It's purely wage replacement minimal wage replacement at that. Next slide, please. So as I said, for disability benefits insurance, employees can receive a wage replacement of up 170 a week for 26 weeks maximum. Next slide, please. Before I go on to who needs coverage, the cost of workers' comp insurance, you go to an insurance carrier, whether it's the New York State Insurance Fund or one of 250 other carriers like Zurich or Hartford or any of the private carriers. They're going to charge you for that insurance based upon how dangerous your job is. What do you do? Do the people that work for you, are they clerical workers? Well, maybe that's 30 cents per $100 of payroll. And if they were doing something more dangerous, it would be a lot more money, okay? As far as who needs coverage and who doesn't, businesses with employees need coverage. Next slide. So who's an employee? This is where it gets a little tricky. Basically, anybody providing any service to a for-profit business can be determined to be an employee of that business if they file a claim when they're injured. Any compensated individual providing services to a not-for-profit can also be determined to be an employee, with the exception of teachers and clergy doing that type of work. There, they don't need it. But other than that, not-for-profits, you have a not-for-profit and you're paying people, you need coverage just like a for-profit. Next slide, please. So then who doesn't need to carry workers' comp insurance? Basically, a sole proprietor with no employees. It's me working for me and nobody else. No subcontractors, no family members, no nobody. It's just me. I don't need workers' comp if it's only me. Partners in a partnership with no employees. If it's only partners working and nobody else, you don't need it. A one or a two-person owned corporation with no other employees, where each of the people own at least one share of stock between them and own all the shares together, 99-1, 50-50. If there's a two-person corp, they each have to be shareholders and hold the offices of the corporation. There can be no third shareholder. There can be no third officer. There can be no other person compensated. If it's set up like that, you don't need it. LLCs, if the only people being compensated are members of the LLC, and again, nobody else, you don't need it. Next. So I started to say before, the premium, the cost of the insurance is by a class code. As I mentioned before, a class code is determined by how hazardous it is what you do. Class codes are created by the Compensation Insurance Rating Board, and there's a class code for all the types of work. And again, if you're doing clerical work, it could be 30 cents per $100 of payroll. If you're doing carpentry, it could be $18 per $100 of payroll. Then you take your size of your payroll, obviously, and then how safely you operate your business. If you're in business over a year and the average accidents in your industry are 5 a year and you have 25, your premium is going to be very high. Conversely, if the average is 5 a year and you have 0, your premium is going to go down. The premium is an estimated premium. When you get your workers' comp insurance, it's going to be estimated. You're going to tell the insurance carrier what it is you think you're going to be doing, how many employees you think you're going to have, what you think your payroll is going to be. And at the end of the year, you're going to get audited. You're going to send all that information to the carrier. And if you were correct, then your premium will hold. If you underestimated, you're going to get charged more. And if you overestimated, they're going to give you money back. So you need to keep good records, and you need to be completely honest with your insurance carrier on what it is your employees are going to be doing. To not do that is a crime. Every carrier has administrative expenses. That goes into the cost of your premium as well. And it's always good to shop it around, just like you shop car insurance every year or home insurance. Shop your workers' comp, but never let it lapse. Next slide, please. So again, some specific coverage issues. We went over the sole proprietors. Family members need coverage. Unless you're set up like a corporation or a partnership, you need coverage. Domestic employees, if you're going to hire somebody to work in your home and they work less than 40 hours a week, coverage is not required. If they work more than 40 hours a week, coverage is required. If they live with you and work less than 40 hours a week, coverage is required. Independent contractors, excuse me. This is where a lot of people get into trouble. Everybody wants to be an independent contractor because if you're the employee, you get a bigger paycheck. If you're the employer, you want them to be an independent contractor so that you don't have to carry workers' comp or payroll taxes or any of that stuff. So you have to be sure that it is truly an independent contractor situation, not because you say so, but because it truly is. So the board, next slide, please. The board has 12 criteria that we use to determine if somebody is an employee or an independent contractor when it comes before the board. The first three, direction and control. Does the business have their own federal employer identification number? Do they maintain a separate business? But I'll give you an example. Years ago, there's a restaurant that ran lobster night every Wednesday night. And the owner of the restaurant hired a fellow to cook lobsters, but he considered him an independent contractor. He paid him on a 1099. He only worked for him Wednesday nights. Well, as it would happen, he got injured and went to the hospital, was treated, filed a claim, and the restaurant owner said, no, he's an independent contractor. Well, when I went before the judge said to him, well, what kind of business are you in? And he goes, I have a restaurant. And he said, well, what did the person do that was injured? He was a cook. Well, there's nothing independent about that. All right. The guy runs a restaurant, you hire a cook, you can call him independent, but he's your employee. Even if he's just a part-time employee, coverage is required. So go on we have a great website. It's wcb.ny.gov, and you'll see that later on in the presentation. But there, if you look at independent contractors, you'll see the criteria that we use, and be very careful going through it. And I would suggest if you're not certain that that person you're hiring has their own business that's doing business with other people, and we would not consider them to be your employee, you should contact our office and we can help you make that decision, because it's really important. You never want to be an uninsured employer, okay? Because then you're responsible for all of those bills, and I get those horror stories, and you don't want to be a part of that. Next slide, please. If you're in the construction business, the Department of Labor has the Construction Industry Fair Play Act that they oversee, where workers are presumed to be an employee unless they can prove they have their own business. Go on Labor's website, labor.ny.gov, look at the Construction Industry Fair Play Act, and make sure you follow those rules. Next slide, please. General contractors are responsible, they're liable for the workers' comp claim of any uninsured subcontractor. So if I'm a general contractor and I'm hiring subs, I'm getting a certificate of insurance from those subcontractors that shows me they have their own workers' comp insurance. This way, when I get audited at the end of the year, remember I told you workers' comp is an estimated amount? If the people that I'm using as subcontractors don't have their own insurance, I'm going to get charged for it. And I'm going to get a whopping big bill at the end of the year. Next slide, please. What I suggest you do, if you're using subcontractors, is have them add you as a certificate holder on their comp policy. And it doesn't cost them anything. And what that will do is it will alert you if they stop paying. The workers' comp, you can pay like auto insurance, put a down payment and pay monthly. You could get somebody that comes to you as a subcontractor, gives you a certificate of insurance that they got because they put down a down payment, and then they stop paying. If you're not a certificate holder, you wouldn't know that until you get audited at the end of the year and get that big bill. But if you're a certificate holder, you'll get notification that my insurance canceled, and you call that person in and you say, you're off the job until you get your insurance back in place. That's very important. Next slide, please. There are very significant penalties if you are supposed to have workers' comp insurance and you do not. They're up to $2,000 for every 10 days you don't have it. That's $72,000 a year, as well as if you have up to 5 employees is a misdemeanor with a maximum $5,000 penalty, and more than 5 employees is a Class E felony, subject to up to a $50,000 penalty and a maximum of 1 1/3 to 4 years in prison. So, also, you remember I told you about those class codes and how you get the insurance? By telling the carrier what it is you do, and then they base the cost on what you've told them. Well, if you're unscrupulous, if you're a bad player, you can do what's called misclassification. Let's say you had a construction business, but you didn't want to pay the high cost of insurance. You tell the carrier, I have a business, I only use clerical workers. So they give you a very inexpensive policy. You now have a certificate of insurance that you can show, right? But that's misclassification. And that is a very egregious penalty. It's the same as being uninsured, and it's actually even worse because we know it's premeditated. You didn't make a mistake, so you really get punished very severely. Next slide, please. Also, one thing to consider, there's something in New York called a debarment law. If any of you do business with any municipality in the state, any penalty with the board will put you on a debarment list, which will prohibit you from being awarded any bid, any contract with any municipality in the state of New York for a year. If you did the more egregious penalty, it would be for 5 years, but many employers are on the debarment list because they make a mistake, because they get in an argument with their insurance carrier, they don't pay a bill, they let it lapse. Then they end up okay, but guess what? Now they're barred from doing what they do for a year. So never let it lapse. If you think that your carrier is making an error, pay the bill. If you're correct, you'll get paid back. If you're not correct, you should have paid it. All right, but you never want to be on the debarment list. Next slide. Next slide. There is an appeal process, and I deal with it on a daily basis. My office deals with it on a daily basis. The Workers' Comp Board does not want to take your money in penalties. If you're penalized, don't stick your head in the sand. Contact us. What we will do is we want to ensure that you have the proper coverage. So we'll make sure you have the coverage. And then once we know that, we will ask you to send us a copy of the premium page of your policy, which shows the board how much you're paying a year for your comp. And then we will base the penalty on what you should have paid for the period of lapse. It'll be still more than you should have paid, probably double or triple, or in the worst case, 4 times, but it won't be $72,000 a year. For example, on a daily basis, penalties are reduced from $50,000 to $1,200. All right, so you get the idea. If you're penalized, if you know someone that's penalized, contact our office. It's not going to go away, but contact our office. Before you do, make sure if you're still in business, you have the proper coverage in place. Then contact us and we will work with you to reduce that penalty. Next slide, please. To keep an eye on your premium to see if you can keep it low, make sure, number one, remember that class code, make sure you got the proper class code. You can always check with the Compensation Insurance Rating Board. They will tell you, you tell them what you do, they'll tell you what class code you should be in. Then you check with your carrier to make sure you're in it. And if you're not, you can appeal that with the carrier. And if they don't go along with it, you can appeal it to the rating board. If you have any question like that, it's a little more complicated, I suggest you contact our office either by phone or by email, and we can walk you through that process. And most importantly is operate safely. The less claims, the less cost for insurance. Next slide, please. One of the ways to reduce accidents is to have a labor management safety committee. Sounds like a big title, and you don't have to be a big business to have it. You just have to have a business with several employees. You take somebody from management, you take someone from labor, you meet monthly, you switch around who's the chairman, and again, you meet monthly. You schedule a regular meeting. Next slide. You walk the workplace, you review your equipment, you check with labor and see what are the shortcuts that you take. I mean, management doesn't know the shortcuts. The people that are doing the job know the shortcuts. Accidents happen when you take shortcuts. So if you go through these procedures, make sure that the recommended practices that come with the equipment are being followed. Make sure, establish your safe procedures and train for safety. It sounds cumbersome, but it's not. And the results can be very, very good for your premium. Next slide. There is something called Code Rule 60, a workplace safety prevention incentive program that is overseen by the Department of Labor. And if you have a safety program, a return to work program, a drug and alcohol prevention program, you can save up to 10% of your premium the first year and 6% in following years. For information on that, go to Department of Labor's website, which is listed here. And even if you just go to New York State Department of Labor and type in Code Rule 60, you'll get all the information you need, and they'll help you through it. Next slide. The Department of Labor will also come to your business. They'll visit your workplace, they'll walk through it with you, and they'll give you advice on how to run it more safely, and there's no cost for it. There's really no reason not to do it. So there's the number at the Department of Labor you can call, and they'll be happy to come and help you. Next slide. So to wrap up the workers' comp, your responsibilities is make sure you have the insurance. You're going to get a poster from the carrier. You hang that where your employees can see it. Should somebody get injured, make sure you report it timely, like immediately within 10 days. Section 120 of the workers' comp law states that an employee cannot be discriminated against for filing a claim. You can't discriminate against somebody, hold it against them for filing a claim. Employees can only be terminated for a valid business reason. If you have to replace them and somebody's out on comp, you can do that. If you have normal reasons to let somebody go, you can do that. You just cannot fire somebody because they filed a claim for workers' comp insurance. And also, employees are eligible regardless of their citizenship and their immigration status. Next slide. As it relates to COVID-19, if a worker notifies you that they've tested positive for COVID-19, you must report it to your insurance carrier, who will file a workers' comp claim with the board. If they tell you they got COVID-19 on the job, file that claim. Next slide. 2018, Governor Cuomo signed into law the New York State paid family leave, which is due to go up in a couple of days. And it is to be taken for paid time off for one of three reasons: either to bond with a child, take care of a sick family member, or assist a family member when a service member is being deployed overseas. It is not to be taken for yourself. It's to be taken to assist others. Next slide. All private employers are required to provide paid family leave coverage. The employer must get the insurance. They get that from the same disability benefits insurance carrier that they're going to, and that they can then deduct the cost from the employee's paycheck. It is employee funded. The employees pay the cost of the insurance. If the employer wants to pay for it, he can or she can, but it is set up where the employees pay the cost of the insurance. Next slide. Sole proprietors and self-employed individuals can voluntarily opt in. Within the first 26 weeks of starting a business, there's no waiting period. After 26 weeks of starting a business, there's a 2-year waiting period. Next slide. So as I said before, it's fully paid by employee payroll contributions. The Department of Financial Services sets the employee contribution rate to match the cost of the coverage. And you can see the cost information and a deduction calculator at paidfamilyleave.ny.gov/cost. It's very easy to navigate. Just go to New York Paid Family Leave and you can see it. Next. So again, the employer must get the coverage, pay the premium, provide information about paid family leave to their employees, provide wage information to the insurance carrier when an employee requests paid family leave. You should visit the employer section of paidfamilyleave.ny.gov for more details. Next. COVID-19 paid leave is paid leave legislation guaranteeing job-protected paid leave to workers who are subject to a mandatory or precautionary order of quarantine or isolation for COVID-19, whose minor dependent child is under such an order, or whose minor dependent child is under such an order. Next slide. Your role in implementing the COVID-19 quarantine leave, whether you're self-insured or providing these benefits through the carrier, is pretty much the same as it is for New York Paid Family Leave. However, there are new COVID-19 specific forms and attestations, which you'll see at paidfamilyleave.ny.gov/COVID-19. Next slide. For more information on paid family leave, here's the information. Here's the website and phone number. Next. This is ways to follow us on social media if you're so inclined. It's interesting, I guess. Next. And most importantly, for help with what I've been talking to you about, that 518-486-3331 number is my phone number, my desk. That neil.gilberg@wcb.ny.gov is my email. Send it, your questions, or call. And there's always somebody there that's going to answer them and get right back to you. We get back immediately, and we can fix problems that have been going on for years very, very quickly. So if you know, again, if you know somebody that's got a penalty that's been, living a nightmare, please get a hold of us and we can end that nightmare for them. And I hope this has been informative to you. And let's see if we have any questions.
Okay, Neil. Oh, okay, sorry.
It's okay. Thanks, Neil. That was so helpful. We're gonna scroll to the Q&A. So we have 2 questions. The first one is from Teresa. Well, actually, they're both from Teresa. Hey, Teresa, thank you so much for joining us. She asks, if you have a part-time employee who works 15 to 25 hours a week, do you require workers' compensation?
Yes.
Great. And then there's another part also. If you have a tutor 15 hours a week, are they an employee or an independent contractor?
If it's a tutor for yourself, for like your kid, is that what it is? So if I'll put it this way, yeah, if you hire a tutor to help teach you or your family member something, they would be an independent contractor. If you were providing tutors to other people, they would be your employee. If you're in the business of, running like a school and sending tutors out, that would be, coverage would be required. But if you're hiring somebody to help your child in school as a tutor, coverage is not required.
Great. Did that help, Teresa? I hope that it did. No problem. The next one is from John Serini. Hey, John. I'm so glad to see you here. John asks, if you are a partnership with more than 2 partners, would you be required to have workers' compensation? Likewise, if you had an S Corp with 3 or more officers, would you be required to carry workers' comp?
Okay, two-part question, John. So the first part, if you're a partnership and there are only partners being compensated, there are only partners involved, coverage is not required. If you're a partnership with 16 partners, but you hire somebody to answer the phone for those 16 partners, coverage is required. But if it's only partners doing the work and nobody else, nobody's volunteering, nobody, just partners, you do not need coverage. If you're an S Corp with, or any Corp with 3 shareholders, coverage is required.
Great, thanks. We have a question from Bernard. Hey, Bernard, thank you for joining us. And he asks, I have a sign business. Some days workers install signs and 1 day fabrication and 1 day office work. Are 3 codes needed? Should I read that again, or did you get that?
No, I got it. But I have a question. Are the employees doing all 3 of those jobs? Or do they have specific employees doing those jobs?
He said
the clerical work. Is he also doing the sign hanging?
He answered yes.
The insurance carrier will charge you the highest rate for the most dangerous work being done.
Okay. Great. I hope that helps. Bernard, if you have any follow-up questions to that, you can feel free to type it in. I hope that we answered that.
Yeah, Bernard, you can always send me an email.
Great. So moving on to the next one, we have Irvin, I'm sorry. Hey, Irvin, and he asks, can you review the requirements? I guess, can you review the requirements for household employees?
Yes. For a household employee, if they work less than 40 hours per week, coverage is not required. If they work more than 40 hours a week, both workers' comp and disability are required. If they live with you and they work less than 40 hours a week, coverage is required.
Great. Thank you so much, Neil. Moving on to the next one, we have Gregory. Gregory asks, please clarify the difference between workers' comp and disability insurance.
Certainly. Workers' compensation insurance is an insurance that you buy that covers your employees if they get injured on the job while they are working for you. It covers their medical treatment that they need to receive because of the injury, and it covers wage replacement, money in their pocket that they can't get because they're out of work. So it covers both medical treatment and wage replacement. That's workers' comp. Disability insurance covers off the job. It happened at home. They got injured at home. They were not working for you at the time, but it only covers minimal wage replacement. It has nothing to do with medical treatment, up to a maximum of $170 a week with a maximum of 26 weeks. So it's a partial wage replacement for a maximum of a definitive of 26 weeks.
Great. Thank you so much. Oh, you're welcome, Nard. You're very welcome.
Hi, this is Deb Spence. Can I just interject for a second?
Sure.
Bernard asked a question. I wanted to see if Neil at some point could go over the classification codes and regarding COVID-19, if some of the employees' tasks or duties have changed during the pandemic.
I don't understand that question.
If during COVID-19, if an employee's position has changed, and they're doing like office duties as opposed to
what they can do.
go over
Okay,
that.
what you're asking is, during COVID-19, if you're an employer and you have a workers' comp policy, but your employees are now, instead of banging nails on a roof, now they are working clerical work for you. You should contact the insurance carrier and tell them that. And you will get a reduction in your premium. They won't charge you the higher code for the construction work. They'll charge you the lower number for the clerical work for the period of time that they're going to be doing that. In addition, you can contact your carrier and let them know if you've purchased any PPE for your employees. They will give you a refund based on how much you've spent to protect your employees with whatever PPE you might be providing them.
Did that answer the question, Deborah, that you were asking?
It really was just in general because Bernard's question kind of brought that up and reminded me. So just in case for others to know.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll move on. John asks, if you are a nonprofit organization with someone who receives a 1099, would you be required to have workers' comp? The person does odd paperwork for the organization, nothing consistent.
I think coverage is required based on what he's asked. If he wants, he can contact my office directly and we can go over more information in detail. But generally, it sounds like he's a not-for-profit. He's paying somebody to do office work or clerical work, and we would consider that to be an employee.
Okay.
It wouldn't be expensive, but it would be required.
Okay. All right. I hope that answered it, but he does also have another one for the new disability law for paid family leave. If the employee contracts COVID, not on the job, what is the obligation of the employer? Do we have to pay them as if we have under 50 employees? Do they apply for the disability claim through our statutory insurance carrier?
They could go for this. There's COVID-19 paid sick leave. They can go on New York COVID-19 paid sick leave website and get all the particulars on that.
Okay. Would the PPE expenses include electronic air filters? Does that?
They would check with the insurance carrier.
Okay. To see what exactly.
Right, what they're going to get a refund on. Yes, but I would think it would, certainly.
Okay, great. We have, that's answered. Great. We have John Venezio. Hey, John, thank you so much for coming on. And John asks, how do you get a deduction for PPE expenses? I use the NYSIF and their sign up is through a website that doesn't work properly. Do you have a suggestion for another route to apply for that deduction for PPE expenses?
if he's having trouble with the website, I would suggest I'll give you an email. He can reach out to the Director of Customer Service at the New York State Insurance Fund. And the email is KKIRWAN at NYSIF, New York State Insurance Fund.com. And her name is Carrie Kerwan, and she's the Director of Customer Service. I would just say, I'm trying to get this credit for the PPE. How do I do it?
Okay. And you said that's KKIRWAN at NYCIF.
NYSIF.
NYSIF.
New York State Insurance Fund, NYSIF. Nice.
Okay.
NYSIF.com.
Got it. Thank you so much. We have Irvin. Irvin asks, how do you know if an employee caught COVID on the job or outside?
That's not for you to know. If he reports it to you, report it to your insurance carrier. They'll work on that.
Perfect. And we have, I mean, it's not really a question, it's a statement from Bernard. I don't know if it goes back to the other question that he asked, but he says $500 max.
That's correct. He's talking about the $500 max is for the credit that you'll get for the PPE.
Perfect. And I do believe that we have one question on the chat. So let me close this up and go here. He says, can you repeat what he said about an employee claiming that they got COVID on the job? Oh, you just answered that. Report the manager at HR. Yeah, you just answered that. Great. I don't see anything else, but let me jump back. Sorry, that was answered. Great. Does anyone have any other questions? Let me go back to the Q&A. Let's make sure. So we will have the PDF of the PowerPoint emailed to everyone who's attended this webinar, just in case, you wanted that. That's absolutely something that we'll do tomorrow morning. So everyone that's attended, you will get the PDF PowerPoint of what was just said here.
I would like to thank all of the people that came, the attendees. I think it's great that you take an interest and you're looking to do the right thing and make sure you've got a good foundation for your business. You have all of my contact information. If you have any problems, any further questions at any time, please reach out to us. We're here to help you. And thank you to the Bronx Chamber for having us. We're glad to be here to help you.
Thank you, Neil. That was so informative. And so again, to echo what Neil said, thank you guys so much for attending. I'm sure this won't be the last. If you, throughout this evening or even tomorrow, think of any other questions that you'd like for Neil or anyone there at the Workers' Compensation Board to answer, please feel free to email me at my email, sashee@bronxchamber.org. That's SASHEE@bronxchamber.org. And thank you again, everyone, for coming. I hope you have a good evening. Stay safe.
Okay, take care.
All right.